Right, if you want to cannibalise a motor from an old car or toy, you want a DC motor around about this size, which can take kind of a range between 6 and 9 volts, whereas these tiny ones here won't really do the job. Again, this one is too small. That one came out of one of these cars. Well, the ones for the Raspberry Pi have got a typical voltage range of between sort of 5 and 9 volts, and we usually run 4 1.5 volt batteries to give an approximate 6 volt power to them. Now if you want to try, if you find a motor out of an old toy and you want to see if it's working, easiest thing to do is get a couple of wires, connect them up to the terminals. You can just twist the wires round like I've done here and get a battery. I've got this 9 volt battery here, and my glamorous assistant will connect it to the battery.
Yeah.
So you want one of the wires touching one terminal and the other touching the other terminal. And you can hear, take them off, and you can hear the motor spinning and see it. Try again. And off. So that's essentially what we're going to do with the Raspberry Pi. We're going to use a battery pack and an H-bridge, which we'll cover in another video, and some DC motors with some gears like this that we can use to drive our Pi. Now there are other motors. If you've taken apart an old printer, you might find a motor like this called a stepper motor. That's got sort of typically 3 or 4. We can't use those. So if you've got something like this, you're ripping apart an old printer. You can use those for different things, but not for what we want to drive the Pi. So, and then the other type of motor is a servo, which you might find in sort of remote control planes and steering some remote control cars. And they've got like a tiny little arm on them, and they're usually sort of square. But it's these ones we want. These DC motors rated between sort of 5 and 9 volts. Usually one, as you can see this example on here, one for each wheel. That's a typical sort of setup. This is the underside of a kit for a typical kit you can get. And we're going to connect them to this, which is our H-bridge. I'll show you how to do that in another video. So if you want to salvage some parts from a remote control car, for example, hopefully that will have gears in. But if you've got one that's got gears in and you've pulled out of a car or a toy and you want to test the motor, typically around about this sort of size, 6 to 9 volts, you're going to need a 9 volt battery and just a couple of wires. And you can see I've just literally wrap the wires around the terminals. Sometimes you'll just have to get a couple of blobs of blue tack just to keep the wires on. And the other end of the wires, I've got one red, one white. And I'm just going to touch those on the terminals of the battery, just to make the motor spin. You can see all I'm just doing is touching the. Now that's spinning it one way, and this is important because what we want to do, if you want to spin it the other way, you have to turn the battery terminals round, all the wires on the motor, and you can make it turn the other way. And you can see that this isn't really going to be, it'll make a very good fan, but we need to gear that down for it to be driving a car that's got some torque associated with it. Otherwise this will go a million miles an hour and we won't be able to control it. So we need to gear that down, and the way that normally occurs in remote control cars and these kits here is to have a reduction gearbox in. So this kit that I bought has the DC motors there, and we're in this yellow area here. You've got reduction motors, so they turn that fast RPM down to a much more manageable, slower speed, which will give us a speed that we can control it at and some torque. So Again, these are DC motors, but with a reduction gearbox built in and the wheels attached. And if you've got an old remote control car, you'll get that gearing included as well. And on the Raspberry Pi, usually what we power those motors with is 6 volts, which is our 4 times 1.5 volt battery pack here. And we connect this to our H bridge. And if I turn this over, you can see that H bridge there with those wires going into it on this side here. There's green and white tracer and white and red tracer. So we're going to connect it up to this H bridge, and I'll cover that in another video. So that's kind of where we want to be. We want some decent DC motors to drive our wheels. Usually it's 1 motor per wheel, and then obviously on the kit you've got a redundant or just a swivel or a ball race. So we do all of our driving and steering on the Raspberry Pi with usually 2 motors, 1 attached per wheel. There can be variations on that, and we'll look at that in different videos. But hopefully you can now identify a DC motor, hopefully with a reduction gearbox attached to it, that we can use on the Raspberry Pi. Thank you.